everybody. As you know from my previous videos, a lot of what I focus on is about childhood trauma or recovering from dysfunctional relationships, whether that is within your family or with an ex-partner. And trauma is going to be the topic I focus on, but with a bit more detail about the grieving process that you go through when you're recovering from this sort of trauma. So when we think about trauma, it is important to understand that trauma is a loss. And a loss is something that we feel when something of value to us is lost, or somebody that we valued is lost. Another type of loss is when there was something that we may have needed or expected in our lives, and unfortunately we weren't given this. Every small loss or small trauma in life can accumulate, and most of us will have a lot of very small losses that we've experienced in our life over several years, but we were able to just get over them. We were able to just move on and not focus on these losses. We just kind of saw them as a normal part of our life. But then there's other people like myself and like a lot of you very brave survivors out there that experienced a really difficult childhood, that didn't have the comfort, the nurturing, the love, the stability that most children deserve to have. And for those of you, the trauma was bigger. So like I said before, loss is something that affects us in quite a profound way, and it can cause a lot of emotional pain and unhappiness. And if it's left untreated, so if somebody loses something important in their life and they kind of have a lot of grief associated with that loss, but they don't deal with that grief, then it can lead to really serious depression or anxiety or even anger issues, which is why it's very important to always grieve a big loss in your life. It's very important to talk about that loss, to give it a name, and to feel the painful feelings associated with that grief. A major loss in anybody's life can trigger a grieving process that can take from 2 up to maybe 4 years. And of course, the grieving process is different for everybody, so you shouldn't really put a time frame on it. But this is just from sort of research that I've done and from different articles that I've read in different psychology manuals and books. And they usually say that a grieving process for a really major trauma or a major loss takes up to 4 years. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about specifically, like I said, were the different stages of grief. So the grieving process that you go through when you are dealing with a major loss, or even a few major losses or a few major traumas. And the stages I'm going to go through are 3 stages in this case. The first stage of any sort of grieving process is shock and denial. So when you hear of the death of somebody, or when you hear of something that you never were aware of before, so as a child abuse survivor, it might be very hard for you to come to terms with the fact that your parents might have actually been abusive. You will be in a state of shock. You will be in a state of denial. It will be very difficult for you to accept that that is the reality. And again, if you have just heard that somebody has died in a car accident, or someone has died that you didn't expect to die, of course you're going to be in shock. Your whole world is turned upside down. Everything changes from this day on. So it's very normal to be in shock and to be in denial and to just not believe that this has happened to you. The second stage is obviously where the real grief starts, the acute grief. There's continuing but lessening denial, so you're slowly starting to come to terms with the fact that this has happened, or that you have learnt of this, whatever that may be in your life. There's obviously physical, psychological pain. You might wake up in the morning, and of course the depression and the grief are even more intense, because every morning that you wake up, this is when you feel the loss even more. This is when you have to get used to it. You're going to have a lot of preoccupation with thoughts of the loss. You're going to feel a lot of restlessness. You're going to feel a lot of confusion in this stage. You are going to feel emptiness at points. You're going to feel very disorganized. Your sleeping patterns are going to be off. You know, sometimes you're going to sleep for hours and other times you might not be able to sleep at all. You're going to feel anger and guilt because you're not able to cope with day-to-day life. You are going to obviously be crying a lot. You're going to be feeling hopeless. You're going to be feeling helpless at times. And then, of course, the more you work through this stage, this acute grief stage, and the symptoms will start to lessen. There will start to be glimpses of hope in there. You will start to feel better. And it's usually at this point when you start to see that you are slowly having better days and that this horrible feeling of emptiness starts to lift. This is when you will start noticing that you are moving on in your grief in a healthy way. The last stage, stage 3, is called integration. Depending on whether the outcome of this loss was favorable or unfavorable, if it was favorable, you will feel better able to return to a healthier sense of self. You will be able to feel a sense of acceptance, and you will return to your physical and emotional well-being a little bit quicker. However, if the outcome was unfavorable, so if this loss was just too devastating for you to deal with, if it was too sudden or just too traumatizing for you, then this means that the acceptance of the reality will be a little bit harder. You will have lessening of depression, so you know your feelings of depression might not go away completely, but there will be lessening the symptoms. And also in this sort of category of unfavorable outcomes is that you will probably be more vulnerable to any future losses that occur. But this is again something that you can work through. It might not completely go away. It might be that you just learn to live with it. And it is just accepting the reality of it and just accepting the fact that you might have to live with this underlying emotional pain that you may have long term. So yeah, that's it guys. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that some of these stages of grief you could resonate with if you are currently going through a grieving process, and I'm really sorry to hear that. I really hope that you're okay. If you want to talk to somebody about the feelings that you may be experiencing, then please feel free to send me an email. You're always welcome to leave comments below the video, and if there's anything at all that you would like me to do a video about, then also please let me know. If you are currently grieving, just make sure that you look after yourself, that you eat healthily, that you try and get as much rest as possible, and take a few breaks now and then from your family, because they also might need a little bit of time apart from you, because this is just as hard on them, because if they love you and they see you suffering, then they're going to suffer too. So that's also a really important point about grieving. Take care wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.